In this review I'll be talking about Uncharted 3, developed by Naughty Dog, initially for the PlayStation 3 in 2011 and recently re-released in the Nathan Drake collection for PlayStation 4. Uncharted 3 is the third release in the well-established series, which brought a lot of expectations along with it, especially because of the critical success of the second installment. In this review I'll be looking at whether Uncharted 3 was a worthy entry and sequel to the most highly regarded game in the series. The story of Uncharted 3 takes a similar format to the others. The ongoing story of the Uncharted franchise follows the adventures of Nathan Drake, a treasure thief who is always in search of historical landmarks and artifacts yet to be discovered. The game has an equal focus on both story and gameplay, however the stories often remain very light and on the surface, so as not to overcomplicate the characters' motives and remain relatable. The plot branches off into two time periods at points, one being Nathan in his younger years and the story surrounding how he met his companion Sully, which makes for some good character development.
A little gratitude would be nice. I did just save your ass back there.
Thanks. But what's in it for you?
Also, foreshadowing of the game's villain is tied in with the present timeline, where Nathan and his team plan to discover an ancient city believed to be hidden in the sands and overflowing with riches. The present day story deals with how Nate must steal from the game's villain, who is racing towards the same goal. The Uncharted series is well known for adding a supernatural twist to a lot of the story, which can appeal to younger players as well as branch genres and add a bit of suspense or mystery to the game. This is far easier to pull off by keeping the story easy to follow, therefore the player can easily suspend their disbelief and continue to enjoy the game with no break in immersion. I personally like the light story of Uncharted 3. It's interesting enough with historical influences, yet still easy to follow and allows the player more time to take notice of the outstanding writing for character interaction and set piece moments adding to the overall gameplay. With it taking around 6 to 8 hours to complete, this lighter story is a lot easier to accomplish to a high standard. The immediate impression of Uncharted 3's gameplay is that it's easy to grasp within the first 10 minutes. Very standard control scheme for the genre, being X to jump, R1 to shoot, etc. Something that will allow the game to reach out to a wider audience. When talking about Uncharted, it's important to look at the genre and its conventions to get a better idea of what exactly it is Uncharted does that sets it apart. Uncharted 3 is within the third-person action-adventure genre and has no shame in relishing in the conventions of this genre, whilst still remaining unique. The genre is known for platforming, gunfights and other combat, as well as some puzzle solving and a slightly more serious story. One thing the game includes that is a rarity in the genre are huge playable set-piece moments that give it an action movie feel similar to Indiana Jones, adding to the lighter story and making a bigger focus on the minute-to-minute gameplay. The game heavily involves platforming at a far higher level of polish and intricacy than I've personally seen in any other game, with the possible exception of Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed allows you to technically do more, yet Uncharted 3 still manages to do it on a bigger and more impressive scale. The way in which environmental design is taken into account when implementing these climbing mechanics is outstanding. Moving from one area to the next in a dilapidated castle feels natural and suspenseful, and this is largely thanks to the climbing and exploration mechanics which Naughty Dog continue to refine even further with the third game. The platforming is utilised very well to pad out segments between gunfights and cutscenes. This moment to breathe in gameplay gives the characters time to engage in dialogue and build their relationships on screen, which are amazingly executed.
I'm sorry.
I know.
The game does include gunfights that play very similarly to most other AAA third-person shooters. However, this is expanded upon with hand-to-hand combat and stealth segments, oftentimes allowing you to choose whether you would like to remain quiet or run in and shoot everything that moves. A simple change in the game's rules and mechanics, giving these choices, can make a big difference for the better. The puzzles are mostly designed to fit with the theme of the ancient historical locations you visit, and oftentimes are made to work in tandem with the environments and platforming mechanics, making for some rewarding puzzle solving as well as clever level design and progression. Does it introduce something new that has innovated the genre and the development of future games? No. Does it matter? Not at all. Most of what Uncharted 3 is built on relies on these already established conventions of the genre. It doesn't specifically add something entirely new with regards to gameplay, with the huge exception of the playable set-piece moments that take cues from action films. But on the other hand, you could say that the thing that sets it apart is the way in which these conventions are presented. It takes these conventions and polishes them far beyond what many would expect to see of an action-adventure game. People draw the obvious comparison of Uncharted to Tomb Raider, as both involve platforming and puzzle solving in a similar style. Both in terms of visual design are very similar, which is to be expected as the characters from both games have a similar set of skills and profession that would in turn dictate the locations these characters visit. Uncharted does a lot of things technically the same, yet far better due to the extent of detail and fluidity. The older Tomb Raider games, while still hugely fun to play, suffered greatly from pacing issues due to the not yet refined platforming mechanics. This was prevalent as recently as up until the release of the reboot titled Tomb Raider, that took a lot of cues from the Uncharted format. It took a newcomer to the genre to set the standard with the release of the first Uncharted. While it's not the main draw of Uncharted 3, it is important to touch upon the multiplayer, that remains entirely separate from the campaign. The multiplayer is structured very similarly to other third-person shooters such as Gears of War. It has varying game types that include Team Deathmatch, in which you're assigned to a team, and whichever team gets the most points for killing the enemies wins. Capture the Treasure is a fairly generic take on the Capture the Flag game mode, changing no core rules of the staple game type. You and your team must steal the enemy team's treasure and escort it back to your own base to secure a point. The team with the most points wins. As far as any further game modes go, they all once again follow generic online shooter conventions. While the multiplayer is fun, for me this is more due to the mechanics introduced from single player being just as well executed online, as opposed to the game modes actually being particularly engaging. The times I spent playing the online modes were often very sporadic and short-lived. It's fair to say that the online won't have the wider appeal of the campaign. For fans of online shooters, it is undoubtedly very well made and will appeal to them greatly, however it wasn't enough to keep me playing. As a whole package, Uncharted 3 touches all bases at a very high standard and raises the bar even higher with every single release, Uncharted 3 sitting comfortably at the top. One of the areas in which Uncharted 3 is cemented as a giant in the games industry is with design. With a level of visual detail and quality unmatched on the system, the game still easily holds up a good few years after its release, and being completely honest, I see this game's visuals remaining timeless. The art direction in Uncharted 3 is made to fit with the locales that the player explores. Many Middle Eastern locations are visited, so as a result the colour palette is heavily consistent of yellows, blues and browns. There's something about seeing the scorching yellow sand and the heat waves contrast with the piercing blue sky above you in the desert segments of this game that's very visually satisfying and impactful. Watching the sand form around your feet as you stumble through an endless expanse of sand dunes, hearing nothing but vultures and Nathan's rambling monologues as he starts to dip into insanity. Scenes like these in the game give an example of the blockbuster movie appeal of the game's writing and design, and contrast excellently with scenes of intense action. Playing through a bar fight that crashes from room to room with bottles flying and bones crunching with the accompanying booming orchestrated soundtrack, which struggle to leave anybody feeling relaxed and calm. These contrasts in segments of the game allow the character of Drake to be humanized through the writing and become far more relatable for the player. You play as him when he's strong, and the game doesn't let you sit back and watch when he's helpless. The game also has a limited HUD, only given the critical information such as bullets so as not to break immersion too much. It features some dark, gritty and gothic visuals which tie in with the historic influence of the game, yet the characters act as a form of relief as they are often upbeat and positive even in times of danger. This strays away from other games such as Tomb Raider, as they typically keep it serious with little release from these themes. It gives it a unique appeal, and I feel is one of the reasons that this can still appeal to a younger audience. Death and pain aren't as impactful when the attitudes of those around it doesn't directly reflect it in a negative light. Overall, just brilliant art direction and design, both visually and with audio. The settings of this game remind me more of an Indiana Jones film than any other entry in the series to date, and it's not a bad thing. There are no deeper meanings to the story in Uncharted 3. It tells a complete story from beginning to end, with no overly complex subplots, and plays out just like an action film, which is refreshing to see from a lot of newer games that try to add too much and sometimes end up falling short of their intended goal. In summary, Uncharted 3 is an amazing game that manages to bridge different target audiences while remaining focused and engaging. With the standard format of the multiplayer, it most likely won't be the main reason that you would pick the game up, however it's still there and done to a high standard for what it is, and that's a plus. I'd recommend it to fans of 80s action films, older teens and adults that enjoy watching well-written character relationships develop on screen. People who need deeper meanings and messages within a plot won't find much to satisfy that here. Any fans of the first two games will absolutely love Uncharted 3. Does it meet expectations 100 times over? Yes. That's it for the review of Uncharted 3, so thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative.
My God, do you know what this is?
It's a book, mate. There's a lot of them in here. It's a library.